Hi, my name is Cindy Rang with the Fabric Patch, and today is day 8 of our 12 days of Christmas. So if you've been hanging out with us for the last week, we started on December 1st. We are going until December 12th with fun little quick tutorials and some specials that are good for 24 hours. And tonight, if you can't tell, it is going to be this fantastic easy piecing grid. We have done videos on this stuff before. And in fact, maybe Anna can put a little thumbnail for you, or a copy of the thumbnail up here of the one that we did last year that was kind of popular. I no longer have that quilt. Somebody won that quilt, but it's also this behind you. And what it is it's a really cool technique where you just cut out squares, fuse down the squares, sew them all together. So we're going to show you a fun, really fast project that uses just 2 panels. We'll tell you about the special at the end. I'm going to show you how it goes. I want to show you this one first. This is kind of fun. This is the 1/2 inch finished, and this is 1 panel. So this is 9 by 14. And so it's just kind of fun sometimes to see the size difference. And it's really the only way that I would ever do a 1/2 inch finished anything. So anyway, lots of books. A lot of you guys already are aware of this kind of stuff, but we're going to move into the sewing room and I'm going to show you a really cool project. And then at the end, we're going to talk about your special for tonight. Let's start by showing you the panels. There are 4 different sizes. This one happens to be the 1 inch finished, and which means that when all of this is sewn together, it'll be a 1 inch finished square. And we use this one with 1.5 inch size squares. You'll see that again in a second. And all of them are basically the same. They are 18 squares long by 9 squares wide. This one is a 1.5 inch finished. So the 1.5 inch, again, same thing. It's 9 squares across by 14 squares down. And this one, we would start with a 2 inch finished square. And then the largest of them is the 2 inch finished. And you can see quite a substantially different size, but again, 9 squares across by 14 squares down. And we would start with a 2.5 inch square in order to end up with the 2 inch finished. Now, one other one I want to mention is this tiny little baby guy, which is super, super cute. I will show you some other projects that we've done with this. Same idea, except this one, we are going to use 1 inch squares and it's going to end up finishing a 1/2 inch. And the other thing to know is that this panel, it is almost like having 4 squares of this. So it's going to be 18 across by either, 48 or 54?
I think it's 48.
48 squares long. So a little bit different. Okay, so these are the panels that we're working with. Okay, let's show you some of the books. So there's, I think, 4 or 5 different book titles. This particular one is for kids. Now, what's really nice is that the center of every single book goes through all of the directions, exactly how to start, how to read the pattern, how to put everything down, how to sew it, and how to finish it. So the center of every book has all of the directions, even how to make, how she would suggest that you make half square triangles, but that's all they are, is either squares or half square triangles, and you can decide for yourself. And what's kind of nice is that the book for kids, you can see that it's 1, 2, 3 panels. And so then each book is going to show you that if you want to make it out of using the 1 inch finished square, it would show you how much fabric you need and what the finished size would be. If you're going to make it out of the 2 inch finished, it tells you how much fabric you need and what the finished size would be. If you're going to make it out of the or 1.5 inch finished and 2 inch finished, same thing. All of the amount of fabric that you need and what the finished size, but the pattern itself stays the same. You're just deciding what size squares you're cutting, what size half square triangles you're making, what size panel you're starting with, and that's what's going to tell you what your finished size will be. So what's kind of nice about the kids one is that nothing takes more than 6 panels. And so it's kind of cute. You could even, if you wanted to, make it 4 panels if you want to. And what's kind of fun is that maybe you will want to be the one to cut up all of the squares, but then once you give them the panels, it's almost like doing a puzzle. You just do a little puzzle, you do one of the squares, you're going to sew that together, do the next panel, sew it together, do the next panel, and then you put the whole thing together. So it's pretty clever the way that she's done it. So this particular one is the one for kids. This one is the one that I use quite a bit. It's just a really nice way to be able to make Trip Around the World and some of those maybe trickier quilt patterns. This one is Heirloom Quilts. All of these are done the same way. And she just does everything in pieces of in panels rather than blocks. So see, panel number 1, panel number 2, and you're just going to follow all of those squares. You just do one at a time, sew the whole thing together, and it's just a little different way to do it. And then this one is actually blocks. We did this as a block of the month. Panel of the month is what we did. Again, it starts with all of the directions are the same, and then you can put it together a couple of different ways. So you can see one panel is actually 2 blocks. The second panel, the third panel. And all it is squares and half square triangles. And it'll tell you how much you need and what the finished size would be based on the size of panel that you chose. So what's nice about this is that it's just an easy, if you like puzzle piecing and you want your quilt to turn out exactly right, it's kind of nice. If you happen to be somebody who's a detailed quilter and you know how to make a Jacob's ladder and you're a little bit worried, it's like, well, I can go ahead and make that a whole different way and I don't have to worry about the interfacing. What you need to know about this interfacing is that it's designed very specifically. And it is fusible on one side, it's just regular on the other side. And the first time that and it's not very thick at all, but the first time that it's washed, 70% of it will wash away in the wash using leaving just a little bit of fibers behind. So it doesn't add any bulk to your quilt at all. You don't really notice it at all while you're piecing, and you absolutely don't notice it when the quilt is done. So anyway, all right, so that's just a review of some of the products that are available and what we'll have for you. We'll talk about your special at the end, but what we're going to show you and what's in your kit is these 2 patterns. This is the one that I'm going to put together with you today just to kind of show you a couple of steps, but you're going to get both. You'll get this wreath, and you can see that the wreath takes 2 different panels, and you can decide for yourself, again, if you want it to be 1 inch finished, which means that I'm going to start with 1.5 inch squares. It's going to end up being 14 by 17 inches when it's finished. If you want to start with 2 inch squares, making the 1.5 inch finished, it will end up 21 by 25.5. Or if you want to make it a little bit bigger, you can make it kind of nice. That's almost panel size. And then you could go ahead and put some borders on it. Again, it's not going to be stiff. It absolutely would be a lovely quilt and a nice way to use up some things. So this is in your packet, this pattern, and also this one. This one you can see uses 6 panels. And again, same thing, the amount of fabric that you would need depending upon what size and the size that it's going to end up. I mean, you could actually make a full-size gnome quilt saying ho, ho, ho using your 2 inch finish using just 2.5 inch squares. This is the pattern that we're going to work with today, and just a little mention, if you don't get our kit, this particular pattern is available as a free download in the description below, as is this one. So, and of course, this is provided by 10 Sisters. They're the people who put the grid together. You will need the grid to be able to do it, so, but if you already have that at home and already have scraps, and you just need the pattern, you can get that in a couple of ways. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut this. So if you've been quilting for any length of time, you probably have a bunch of leftover fabric, and that's all I'm going to do in this. I know that I need 122 squares. I just have to decide what size square I want to make. I am thinking that I want to make the smallest one because I want to actually make 2. I'm going to have one that's going to go at one end, one that's going to go at the other end, and then I'm going to make it into a table runner. So this is what I'm going to do. So technically I need 244 mixed green squares. I'm going to need then 96 of the background squares, and I can do mixed background. I'm going to need a few of the half square triangles, 4 of those, and 20 red squares. And I'm going to do mixed reds also. So for me, what I've decided to do is I've went through my fabric, green fabric, And I'm actually going to end up pressing this, but these are all just weird little leftover pieces. I'm just going to press them, and then I'm going to layer them and layer them and layer these. It's just a good way to get rid of some weird leftover stuff. And then all I really need to do is just go ahead and put my shape cut on there. I'm actually going to go ahead and start over here. And I really should press them first, but I'm going to go with it. I'm just going to cut on the 0, 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5. We have a shape cut tutorial that you can watch that if you're not familiar with how to use this, you can of course just use a regular ruler if you'd like to. You don't have to use a shape cut for this, but gosh, if you happen to have one, or if you like this kind of quilt and you think that you're going to make it a lot, it certainly makes a huge difference. So once I've cut that, I took this side off, so I have a straight edge here, and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut my 0. After I've cut it, I can take away the end pieces, and I have all of these perfect squares in all of these colors. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cut a bunch more, and I'll be right back. All right, I have my pile of green, I don't know how many, but quite a few, and I have my pile of background. Some of these I decided to cut instead of press, and if you just have an iron-on next to you, if you kind of feel like you want to give it a little zap as you're putting them together, you can go ahead and do that, or press before you start. The other thing is that some of those that as I was cutting, I noticed that I ended up with some pieces that were purple. And sometimes that will happen. Just pull those out of there, unless you think it's okay to have purple in your wreath, and you might decide that that's all right. But if you see some wayward, strange thing that you think doesn't go, just take it out. Totally no big deal. I actually have a box where I put these. I call it my little palette, where I have everything that's all cut up already. All right, so once I have my stack, I'm going to start putting it together, but I want to show you one more thing. If you don't have a lot of leftover stuff, or if you've gotten totally involved in this and you love doing this and you kind of want to create some of your own patterns, a lot of you guys already have this book. It's just a super, super good book. It has all that weird information that you never know that you needed to know. I just want to show you on page 26 of this book, it will say the cut size of the square. So if you're cutting 1.5-inch squares, and you can look across, maybe I need 500 1.5-inch squares. I will need, what does that say? 3/4 yard of fabric. If I'm cutting 2.5-inch squares and I need 200 of them, I need 1 yard of fabric. So this is kind of a fun book. It has all of that kind of weird information, all of the math that somebody has already done for you in case you want to adjust a pattern. It also even has some sewing tips in here, exactly how to do all of the weird binding cuts. Anyway, a lot of you guys already have this, and I just wanted to mention, because somebody's going to ask, well, how do I know how much fabric I need if I don't have weird bits of fabric? And that's how you would know. Here is my grid. So I want to show you again. So this side is where it's printed, and this is the non-fusible side. The fusible side is here. And I don't know if you can tell on your side, it's a little bit fainter, but it's still easy, very, very easy to see where the squares are. And again, they're numbered as if you need that, but they are 14 across. And so I'm going to just follow my pattern. And if you can see that, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 background pieces, 4 green, 5 background. And then it's 3 background. I don't know how many that is, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 green and 3 background. And I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to do that just a little bit, and then we'll be right back. So that was fast forwarded for you guys, but it really didn't take more than what, 5 minutes? Didn't take very long.
Maybe.
And I want you to notice a couple of things. One is that it's just kind of, I don't know if you can go in, it's just kind of inside the line. It's not the exact same size, and it's not supposed to be. And you'll see why when we start to sew this together. We need just a little space there where we're going to fold it over and sew. So you can see that this is kind of a fun thing. It's just like doing a puzzle. So this is the top half, and if we look at our pattern, you can see that what we've done is the first panel. So this is sewn together here, but Brianna's going to just cut that in half right there, because then we're going to do this second panel afterwards. But for this one, what we're going to do is now we're going to slide this over on top of an ironing board, and we're going to press it. So you can see all we're really doing, I don't really want to move too much from where I'm at. Your other option is to do this on top of an ironing board, which is probably what we would have done. But anyway, so now all you have to do is just press these in place, and you don't have to go crazy. This isn't one of those OCD things. Some of them might seem a little bit crooked. You have, you know, up to a ½ inch in between these that's going to be in seam allowance. So you're actually okay. All you want to do is you just don't want to swoop your iron back and forth. You just want to set your iron down and pick it up so that you're not sliding anything, you know, out of the way. And you really want to kind of stay away from the fusible stuff, because you don't want that to get on your iron. And we have a pressing sheet that you can use if you kind of feel like you are getting over close to that edge. Just go ahead and put it on a pressing sheet. I have a couple different kinds. This one is actually a silicone one. If that's what you have, then that works out great. And if you do have that on top, you actually can kind of slide a little bit if you feel like that's what you want to do. You might also have the white one, which works exactly the same way. It's a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to keep pressing this until all of these squares are fused down to the squares to the grid underneath. Okay, I think it's basically down. A couple things I want to show you. One is this thing gets hot, so be careful with that. If something gets a little wonkadoodle, all you really have to do to fix that, heat it up a little bit, and then peel it up, reposition it, and put it back down. One other thing to mention really fast is that if something happens and you do get your iron dirty, if something happened and you got some of the fusible web on there, Iron Clean is the product that you want to use to clean your iron. All right, now that we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and slide my mat out from underneath this. Panel number 1 is complete. I'm going to go over to the sewing machine, but I want to show you here what's going to happen. The fact that this is all pressed down, it just means that these squares are not going anywhere. So I don't have to, you know, hold 2 squares together and hope they don't slide, and then put those together with 2 other squares and put those together with 2 other squares. Everything is right where it should be. Not only that, when I go to sew this, it is perfect. Now I just have to sew my 1/4 inch seam allowance. I can't mess up even if I wanted to. After I sew that seam, I'm going to flip that one over. Sew my 1/4 inch seam allowance. After I sew that one, I'm going to flip that one over. Sew my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to keep doing that all the way over. And then I have one other little step, and then I'll do the other row, and I'll show you that. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew these, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now it looks like this. You can see it looks considerably different, and it has shrunk in, but pretty soon it's also going to shrink down. So all of these were sewn. And what will happen is it's possible that something might lift up. You can go over and hit that with the iron again if you want to, but it's not really going to go anywhere. It's kind of no big deal. You can just leave it alone if you want to. Then what you're going to do is you have to flip it over, and you have to snip this little part right in here. And you just want to make sure that you have good scissors that'll snip clear to the end. And the reason that you have to, and if something happens and you actually cut through that stitch, it's not going to matter. All we're doing is we're just getting ready to come back along and sew that seam. Okay, so they're all snipped. So now, and the reason they have to be snipped, if you were wondering, is because now what's going to happen is we're going to do the exact same thing. As we fold over, of course, it's going to lay over exactly the way that it should because of that little space that we have in there. And then we're going to go to the sewing machine, and because we've snipped it, we are able to then nestle each seam so that each seam will lock in to each seam so that we have perfect points in there. So we're going to go back to the sewing machine and we're going to sew each of these rows. And you can see it's just going to lay exactly the way the other one did. It's all sewn. I'm just going to kind of press it. And most of the time you can kind of control, you know, the way that your seams are going. If something gets a little wonky and one's going one way and one's going the other way, do not get upset about that. Totally doesn't matter. It's not going to make any difference. It's still going to lay just right. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish pressing it a little bit. I'm probably going to also add some Best Press. You can see that every seam is exactly right. Exactly spot on. There isn't anything that has shifted or adjusted at all. Everything is exactly where it should be. So I'm going to finish pressing this. After I've done this, I am going to go ahead then and trim off the outside stuff. I don't need any of that leftover stuff. And then I'm going to make the second panel because, of course, this was the top one. I'm going to go ahead and put this one together the exact same way. The only thing that's a little bit different is I have to pre-make my half square triangles. So she does tell you in the book, and you can make them any way you want to. I am just going to go ahead and use my 2-inch squares, right sides together, sew them, and then trim them down to 1.5 inches. And I need 4 that look like that and 4 that look like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this panel together, sew this together, and then I'm going to show you the very last step. All right, I have it together. So I went ahead and sewed the second panel, pressed it, and then you can see that then all I did is I just trimmed off that outside edge. So it looks like I just like sewed everything together, all old school, which I of course did not. And so now all I have to do is I just have to sew these 2 panels together, make some decisions about borders or how I'm going to do it, and I'm all good. This was the 1-inch finished grid. So you can see, I think that the finished size is going to end up being 14 by 17. But anyway, super fun, super fast, great way to use up leftovers. Great way to have something to do with some younger people that want to quilt. I mean, not that this isn't fun for older people, but cutting up a bunch of that stuff and creating kind of a painter's palette with some squares and just going to town. It's super, super fun. So anyway, I am addicted to this whole technique, this whole process. So let me tell you what your special is tonight for our 8th day of 12 Days of Christmas special. So what we're going to do is we've discounted the books, all of the books, 25%, and we've discounted all of the panels, 30%. And so, we have a pretty good stock. I don't think that will run out. So feel comfortable, ordering what you need, while it's on sale. And then there's also, I don't think we mentioned, there's a Minecraft kit that's in there. That also will be discounted, and you get 8 panels in the whole pattern for that. There's no other way to get that pattern. And so what we'll do for you is all of that is on sale. And if you buy anything, 1 panel, 2 panels, a book, books and panels, anything you want, we're going to go ahead and just put the pattern in your package. You don't have to ask for it. We're just going to automatically put it in there. And what will be in there will be this wreath pattern that we just did, the Santa gnome 2-page, and then we're also going to do the 2-page directions, so that if you don't have a book at home, you really just want to play with this for the first time and you just want to get a couple of panels, you will be all set and all good to go. If there's nothing you need and you don't want to take advantage of this special, but you might want to later, this is available as a free download in the video below. Just go ahead and just save it and print it off yourself, and whenever you're ready to, and you'll be all good. But anyway, super, super fun, and I hope you enjoyed this. And Be sure and check out the other video. I think I mentioned that in the open, but be sure and check out the one that we did last year out of her book. If you feel like you need a little bit more detail and you really want to watch how we sewed it and how we got everything nestled in there. But anyway, and otherwise we will see you tomorrow night for day 9. Thanks. Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.